Hey, good afternoon. Glad to get back going and playing in the SEC. Obviously got a really tough game this week versus a quality opponent that I think is really well coached, and really Coach Heupel's doing a tremendous job on both sides of the ball. I think their offense is explosive. I know last week didn't score as many points as probably they could have, but very explosive offensively. They're snapping the ball about 3 plays per minute, which is at times the fastest offense in college football, which presents a whole new set of challenges for us defensively. Defensively, they're very aggressive. I don't know Coach Banks personally, but extremely impressed with what he's done so far at Tennessee, and watched a lot of his Penn State tape and see the aggressive style of defense that they play. Very complimentary football. I think their special teams, Coach Elkler does a really good job. They play very fast on special teams, and you can just tell their whole football team plays in sync with how they're wanting to play. Obviously, in the SEC, an important game for everybody. Glad for it to be at home. Look forward to having a great home crowd. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Eli, how different is what Josh does offensively from what maybe anything else you've seen so far this season?
I think it's totally different from anything we've seen this season. They really do a nice job of attacking grass and space. They run the football. I think the misnomer is that they just throw it all around the park. They really run it a lot. I think Hendon Hooker is a really dynamic quarterback. Obviously, he's got experience at both Virginia Tech, so he's played a lot of football, and now he kind of fits that system. I remember Hendon really well, recruiting when I was at NC State. He was at Dudley and does a really nice job. Won the state championship when he was in high school, and was at that game, and so very impressed with him and what they're doing defensively. I mean, they really got 2 other really good quarterbacks too. I mean, the young man Mixon comes in. I think he does a nice job. Started the season, been banged up. You watch the spring game. Harrison does he throws a great deep ball and is a tremendously talented 5-star player. So they're really deep at that position and have a lot of options there.
When you face a team that goes as fast as they do offensively at times, does that change what you do offensively?
Well, I think it depends if you're asking me as the head coach or the offensive coordinator, and that's where it gets into a little bit of a bind for me. As the head coach, you've got to do a great job of protecting your defense, and you've got to do a great job of trying to keep them off rhythm. Time of possession is not really a factor to them. If you're asking me as the offensive coordinator, our job is to score points, and so we can't let ourselves get out of rhythm because we're trying to do something that we're not normally doing, and thus not scoring points. The name of the game is points. And I think the biggest thing in this game for us, defensively, we've got to continue to improve fundamentally. Our angles, our tackling, our leverage points, our pad level have got to continue to improve, and we got to continue to coach that better. But we've got to just make sure we're comfortable within our scheme so that we're not making too many checks and not being, we got to have our cleats in the ground, eyes on our keys when the ball's snapped.
And Eli, what challenges does the tempo present your defense? Is it substitutions? Is it communication? Or
all? Yeah, all the above. It starts with the communication and checks, making sure that all 11 people are on the same page, getting lined up. Defense is about communication. You got to see the call, get in position, make sure your eyes are on your keys, and then react accordingly. And when somebody's snapping the ball every 3 plays every 60 seconds, there's a lot of opportunities for error, and they capitalize on those errors. And so, we've got to do a great job of making sure we communicate the call, get lined up, and get the play, defensive play executed.
You mentioned the depth in that quarterback room. I know
Yeah.
they've had different guys play positions this season and haven't really committed to a starter or anything like that. What goes to preparing to face a team when they have those different options and you don't necessarily know who's going to be under center?
I think the benefit for us is that they play a similar offense regardless. I think maybe you would have less quarterback draw if it's Harrison, right? But if not, I think Joe and Hendon play a very similar style quarterback run, ability to create in the pocket, throw the ball vertically down the field, execute their offense at a high level.
I know you said
Yeah.
After you did so, did you feel as though the defensive issues were similar to what maybe you saw against Kentucky, or was there anything new that needs to get corrected? What was just kind of your assessment there?
After watching the tape, there was a lot of things that needed to be corrected. But honestly, it really started mostly with me in making sure that as the head football coach, I've got everybody in sync and everybody in rhythm, that I'm doing a good job of making sure that the whole thing is functioning properly. And, there's some mistakes that were made, some missed tackles. But I think the biggest thing was communication and making sure we were all on the same page of what we were supposed to execute on that play. And that starts with me. And so my challenge to our staff is to let's make sure that all 11 guys are acting as one on defense and that we can play fast. And, we're 3 weeks or 4 weeks into a new defensive scheme, and it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. We're gonna get better. We're all learning it. We're all pushing this thing in the right direction. And so I'm not gonna hit the panic button. Nobody's gonna hit the panic button. We're gonna get our players' confidence back. We're gonna continue to work to improve our techniques and fundamentals. And we're gonna move on to Tennessee. Because it's a whole new set of challenges and problems this week, and if we spend too much time thinking about last week, then we're not putting our proper focus on this week's game. And so we made those corrections Sunday, and man, by Sunday night at 6:30, we were on to Tennessee.
When you're at this point in the season and you're talking about improvements and big picture improvements for the defense, how easy or hard is it to do that kind of stuff mid-season?
Well, it's not just. I think the biggest thing on this football team that everybody's got to understand is it's not a defensive problem. It's every phase of that game had multiple plays that could have won the game. We had a penalty on special teams on the last drive that gave them 15 yards for no reason. After the fact, after the whistle's blown, penalty. That's a discipline issue that comes back to the head football coach. Offensively, we had 2 turnovers. We kick a field goal in the red zone because we have a negative play on a 1st and 10 call. Like, those are things that got to get corrected for everybody. So this is not a defensive problem. Look, everybody can point out issues. Like, it's how do we find the solutions? And for me, that's my job, is to find out how do I get this whole organization running in the right way. And I know the number one thing that causes an issue is when you do this. It's their fault, it's this fault, it's that. Man, it's a lot of things. And so we got to start, So point being, it's easy. It really is. It's easy because you just go back to work. You go back and work on fundamentals. You go back and talk about the things that really affected the game. You talk about things that you can control. Look, offenses are good these days. They're really good. They're going to find ways to attack weaknesses, and they're going to score. All right, my job is to score one more point than the other opponent. And we had that opportunity, and we didn't get it done. So there's a lot of ways to improve, and it's not just one side of the ball. It's all phases, and that's what we're going to do.
How have you seen that message, not pointing fingers, resonate with your players, how they responded from that overtime loss?
Yeah, I think they've responded. I mean, obviously, it was one of the quietest flights and locker rooms and bus rides that I've been because the team's hurting because they're invested. They're invested in each other. They're invested in this process. They're invested in this game. They love the game. And so, consequently, when you lose it, it's painful. But we also understand that you can't hang on to the pain. You got to keep moving forward. You cannot hang on to the pain. You got to keep moving forward. And you got to learn your lessons. Last night my daughter had a softball game. She struck out. She's crying. Look, you can't sit there and hang on to that strikeout. You got to move on. Otherwise, you're going to strike out the next at bat. So you got to learn to move on. How you deal with failures and setbacks determines who you are going to be as a person moving forward. And that's life. That's football. That's us as a program. That's me as a head coach.
Have you ever met Josh Heupel before? Do you remember him coaching at Mizzou all those years?
I really don't. Looking back, the only time we would have crossed over was at 2015 when he was the offensive coordinator at Utah State. But I haven't got a chance to really interact with Josh. I've heard a lot of positive things about him. We got Barrett watching all the spring games, see if he can pick up any of this signals or anything. I'm just kidding. Don't start all that. Never mind. But he is a tremendous football coach. He does a really nice job. But I have not had a chance to interact because we haven't had in-person SEC meetings.
Sean Robinson had, that interception Saturday.
Yeah.
Just how have you seen him develop on the defensive side of the ball
Man.
since taking that switch last year?
I've been blown away at what he's been able to do and how quickly he's been able to do it. He is, playing a lot of football for us, playing a lot of different positions, doing a lot of different things, and still making a lot of plays with effort and technique and toughness. And extremely proud of him and what he's doing in order to help our football team.
What kind of work have you seen him, put
Extra
in?
all the time in here watching film. He's got a quarterback mindset at safety, so he's always working. He's always putting in film. He's always wanting to know more. He's always trying to pick up tendencies and all that stuff. So he's doing everything you can ask from him.
I know you said coming into the year, even though Harrison was really good last year, he's never done it, in a game situation in front of a crowd. Now that you have tangible proof of, I have a guy that can hit a 56-yarder in the biggest situation, what's that do for you going forward?
It's a gut kick for me because I was so proud of him in that moment, and really the entire field goal unit and the sideline. We were just all like, yeah, we're going to get it down there. We're going to go kick this field goal, and we did it. And so it gives you a lot of confidence that he's going to do it. I mean, he hit a pretty big game winner last year versus Arkansas down. So we have a lot of confidence in his leg and who he is. Just disappointed that I wasn't able to put us in a better position to finish it off.
You've had your share of down to the wire games here already.
Yeah.
This time here.
Uh-huh.
And clock management's like the most second guess thing.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
football.
Mhm.
How do you kind of manage that part of the game? Is it a lot of it is on gut instincts, or do you kind of set rules on when you call timeouts, when you make those kind of calls?
Both. Okay, so I don't know maybe specifically which one you're asking about. I know that there was a before half game management and then the end of game.
Yeah, either one. And then, the one it sounded like you thought maybe they were targeting on Connor,
Yeah,
and you didn't get that call.
yeah.
And then call one on defense the last.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So before half, we were in what we call the swing eight opportunity. And so depending on what your philosophy is on whether or not you're trying to maximize possession or go into the ball, I knew they started the ball. I knew they started the second half with the football. And so, one of the lessons I learned last year was against Florida. It was 13-7. I tried to be really aggressive. We fumbled. They scored. It kind of got the game out of reach. So in that situation on the road, just wanted to make sure that the last play of that half was a play that, we either block the field goal, they make it or miss it, but we're going into halftime with the tie. So that's why I chose not to use the timeout there. The other thought was, do you ice the kicker or not? I've had success doing both. We had already come out of a timeout. I just figured, hey, let's roll. Obviously, didn't work. That's part of it. In the second half, okay, so we called the timeout anyway. And so because I had used the timeout, then I asked him to review targeting. I had already used the timeout because we had run the clock down and we weren't going to get the play off, so I needed to use that timeout anyway to save the 5 yards. I think we hit the screen the next play. End of game. I was thinking they had 3 timeouts. Like, once we got the stop, right, we're up by 4. Once we get the stop, I got to make sure that I can either knee it out or what I need to do. So once the clock got under 40 seconds and they had already used one of their timeouts, then the ball game was decided by us what we wanted to do with timeouts. It was first and goal, I think maybe at the 10, and then they got 4 yards. And so it was second and goal maybe at the 6. And at that point, last year against LSU, hey, we're playing this thing out. However it plays out, it plays out. But I didn't want to keep letting them make decisions. I had 2 timeouts. There was a formation that we didn't like, and we didn't think we were in the right call, so we called a timeout there.
Do you, in those situations, are you consciously thinking about past experiences, or do they just kind of become part of how you process it all?
It's kind of part of how you process it all. I mean, every game really has a life of its own because the challenges are different. I think you have learned experiences that can kind of factor into it, but I think each game you got to kind of figure out how that game's being played. I do think our offense had a lot of confidence to go kick that field goal because they've done that before. But I wasn't sitting there thinking, well, this is just like LSU. I was thinking some other stuff.
When you've had those two kind of last-minute drives this year, have you noticed team defenses specifically trying to take Tyler away, or is it more of a situation of you've got to go more downfield, so maybe other guys are just a little bit more involved?
Well, this past game, we only had 25 seconds, so everything had to be a 15-yard throw or more, otherwise we weren't going to get there. The Kentucky game, I believe we went completion, tempo play incomplete, second play, flat throw to Barrett, third down. Tyler was a motion guy, gave up a sack that would have been our first read if we had worked the right side of the field. So I think he was going to be involved. Just didn't work out the way we wanted it.
Eli, you mentioned before the Kentucky and the Boston College games that you don't want to make the matchups bigger than they have to be, but it's kind of still a barometer of where the program stands. You
Yeah.
take a moment to reflect on after both of those losses of this is what we need to do long term compared to short term, or what's your thought process kind of just coming out of those games for where you guys would stand?
Yeah, I think all the above, right? Like, I think you think about how do we be 1-0 this week? What's the process and approach to being 1-0, and how do we get everybody on this same page to try to win an SEC game this week? But there's also a view of 20,000 feet that says, okay, we're still lacking in this area, and this area, and we're going to have to go recruit here and develop here and get better here and look at this matchup and see where they're stronger than us and look at this matchup and see where we're, that's our strength. So don't grow weary while doing good. I think that's the challenge for our whole team and process is like you can get short-term fixes or you can try to build a foundation, and we're committed to building a foundation and letting that speak for itself over the long term. Yeah.
Eli, can you kind of speak to Harrison Mevis' approach and the way he's kind of like built and improved? I mean, he's in the offseason talking about watching Justin Tucker and trying to be on like an NFL kicker level and how that gets you to the point where he can drill a 56-yarder at a pressure spot.
Yeah, I mean, the guy works all the time. He is a constant learner, is consistently practicing and we put him in those situations and he kicks. He's a little bit similar to Connor in that he doesn't ever get too high or too low, and so I think he's got a really bright future ahead of him, and we're extremely proud of him for being here and really grateful that he is.
Eli, with those short-term and long-term fixes
Yeah.
for the program, do you peg one of those, okay, we've got to do this in the off-season, or is this just something we can fix right now, or is that more on a case-by-case basis with how to improve the program?
It's all the above. Yeah, it's all the above. I mean, there's no instant oatmeal for a football program, and so there's some things that we can fix right now. There's approaches that we can fix, whether it's not getting penalties on certain situations, whether it's calling better plays, whether it's making sure everybody's on the same page, whether or not we're getting the buy-in that we need to from everybody within the organization. Those are things that you can approach right now. Overall, increasing your team speed, overall increasing your size in the lines of scrimmage, overall increasing your physicality at certain positions. Like, I just can't fix those. Those are things over the long term where you see people that are built for success. They have these things, and we're trying to get to those things. So, how do we find those solutions long term? There's no waiver wire. Well, there's no waiver wire right now. There's other stuff, but there's no waiver wire. So, like, we got what we got. We got to make it fit to what we need. But you got to also look and say, okay, in 2 years, what do we want this team to be built like? And are we recruiting that? Are we working in the off season to get that? Are we working right now to get that? And I think that's the approach that we're continuing to take every day. We want to be 1-0 this week, and whatever it takes to win this week, we will do. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we set a standard of, okay, this is what we have to be in order to be successful long-term.
I know that sacks and pressures aren't necessarily everything. Trajan's numbers in those categories seem a little bit down right now. Is he getting extra attention, and what kind of have you thought of his play for forward?
Yeah, I think, Trajan's working really hard to put himself in the best position he possibly can. Obviously, when you've got preseason accolades, there's going to be more attention put on you as a player. We just got to continue to work. All of us have got to continue to work to improve each week, and the plays will happen if we continue to do what we're asked to do within the framework of our scheme. I've got a lot of confidence in Trajan and know that his time's coming if he'll continue to put in the work. So.
You said that nobody's, you're not hitting the panic button on the defensive scheme. Is it difficult to resist the urge to change things up a little bit at times?
No, not really. I mean, if you believe in what you're doing, then you believe in what you're doing. If you have belief in your players and belief in your coaches and a belief system that says they're doing what they can do, and then you keep going at it. You keep working. So I believe in our staff. I believe in our players. I believe in our defense. And I believe we're going to get this thing moving in the right direction. And I believe that I've got to continue to help them. I've got to put them in better situations. I've got to do my part as the head football coach. So I think it's more of a belief system that everybody's got to internalize on what they can do to help make it more successful. But it's not panic or scratch. There's a lot of football left. And our best football is ahead of us.
Coach, how much are you looking forward to the opportunity for first SEC home game to kind of see Fairfield Field in an all-SEC match?
Be great. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I know there's probably a tendency from all of us maybe to focus on the doom and gloom maybe after a loss, but just how much do you like the trajectory of where you guys are headed just in the positive nature of the program?
Anytime you lose, the first thing that hits is your confidence, and that's what losses do. They shake you. But yeah, there's a lot of positives in that game too, that you got to continue to lean into and realize this is going to be a long season. I mean, there's still 8 opportunities left for us, and everything that we want to work for, our goals in the season to protect Fairfield Field. We continue to control our own destiny in the SEC as far as SEC league games, and so, I try not to get caught up in the emotion of everything, take the emotion out of it, and just focus on the reality of everything. I think that's a little bit hard for everybody else, but that's got to be the approach. Otherwise, I'm an emotional guy, so I tend to go too far. So I'm trying to really teach myself to not focus on the emotion, take the emotion out of it, look at it from a clean slate, and see that this is a process. It's going to be a process, and commit to the process.
Eli, is Mookie still working through that Tampa injury, or is it just competition at that position?
No, Mookie's not. He's just not been able to get all the way back. When you're a guy who relies on your speed as your number one weapon, like, we've got to make sure, and I think we've done him in service because we've tried to, we got him back, but then we limited his role, and then we've got him back, but he's still a little bit dinged, and so, we're working with the doctors on what's the best approach, so that he can feel comfortable and confident to just go out there and play, and it's not, he gets these 5 plays and that's his role this week, and then he goes out there and he touches it on the first play, and it's like, I'm not really full speed to do that, so we just gotta, we gotta work with him, and I gotta trust him on where he's at, and if he's not right, I want it so bad for him that I'm trying to, like, okay, well, if you're not there, I'll still get you these, and these, and I think I've set him back.
Coach, can it be a benefit to your team's psyche that you've already played in 2 true road atmospheres the first 4 games of the season?
2 great atmospheres, by the way, too. I mean, really good atmospheres. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think the atmosphere bothered us at all, which was great, because I've seen that do the opposite. But I'm not really focused on that right now. I'm really just focused on how we can approach handle and tempo this week in an aggressive style of defense. But it should pay dividends in the future.
Last question.